Hey everybody, it's John Scardena. Just a very quick note before we begin. This is a 3-part episode. All 3 parts are coming out right now. It was a much longer episode, so we broke it out. So if you're driving, you don't have to figure out where your place was before. This is both very educational and very timely. Talking to Jim Balthazar, he is a security and law enforcement expert. So we talk about a lot of historical events. It is kind of a serious topic, so I'm hoping to preface you guys a little bit on this, as well as addressing things like the Charlie Kirk incident, the assassination, I should say, as well as other school incidents at churches. Jim and I are both Christian, and we both help at our churches, and so we talk about it from that in that third part of this episode. And so if you're watching the YouTube, you'll see all 3 parts at the same time. If you're listening right now, you can listen in order or pick out the episode that matches your style the best you need. We hope that you learn a lot. We hope that you don't have an active assailant wherever you are serving in your community. But the things that Jim talks about today, again, are both highly educational and very timely. So we hope that you implement. You can contact him. You can contact myself. But whatever your situation is, please tune in, and we're grateful for your support. So here we go. Thanks. Welcome back, everyone, to the Disaster Tough podcast, where we share insights into the big plays and right calls of leadership. We dive deep into the stories, lessons learned, and ideas that will help you in the field. Let's go. Welcome back to the Disaster Tough podcast. I'm your host, John Scardena. I am so excited for this week's episode. I have a really special opportunity. Jim Balthazar. I'm looking at it. Good. All right, great. Jim Balthazar, he's absolutely incredible. We were just talking for a few minutes. I was like, please stop talking, because everything you're saying is amazing. But it was just very natural for him. So it really shows that he's an expert. He has a lot of different cool experiences. He was in law enforcement, ATF. He's done a little bit of emergency management. He's down there in Pasco County Sheriff's Department. So a big shout out to Andrew Donovan and everybody's down there. Pasco County actually was one of our... I'm trying to think if they were the first. I don't think they were the first, but they were one of the first who started using our MCI resupply caches from our Impulse brand. And that was really exciting. And so as we got to know Andrew more and now Jim, they really do have a phenomenal team down there in Florida. And so at the time of this recording, there's no hurricanes, knock on wood. We hope that there is no hurricanes by the time it comes down. But with that, again, we have a special opportunity. For everybody who's tuning in, I want you to think about the idea of project management for law enforcement, and how project management for law enforcement versus maybe ICS for wildland firefighters or emergency managers adapting ICS or whatever your system is, really pulling that back and saying, how do you coordinate and collaborate even when the system like law enforcement needs to do command and control? And how do you do both of those simultaneously? And so with that, I want to invite Jim onto the show. Jim, thanks for joining me on Disaster Tough.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
So you have a bunch of cool challenge coins behind you. I have a few of myself. You've done a lot of amazing things. You were walking us through, Paul and I, before we started recording, just kind of your background and how you went from law enforcement into the ATF and really ESF 13 and how that that system played out. For the sake of our audience, can you just reiterate that for us?
Sure. So I joined ATF in 1998 as every agent starts as a field agent, street agent, criminal investigator. I started on the West Coast. I was in Fresno, California, and then Las Vegas. And then I was also part-time on our SWAT team is called our Special Response Team. So I was part-time member of that team. And then I went full-time to one of our Special Response teams in Dallas. And I did that for 10 years. And it was when I left that job that I sort of got my first real taste of emergency management, was that I went to our ESF 13 branch at ATF headquarters, which I knew a little bit about, really only in the few years leading up to that, I knew a little about. So I was very excited to do that. It's an absolutely fantastic team up there. And I did that for a little over 2 years. I finished my career as a public information officer for our special operations division. And then I retired about 2.5 years ago. And since then, I've done a variety of things. Right now, I'm the director of security for a large church in the Tampa area. And I also work part-time at the Pasco Sheriff's Office in the emergency management section.
So you have lots of different things I'm going to talk about. In fact, my audience doesn't know this, but to the shock of my life, about a month ago now, my priesthood leader in our church called my wife and I in and asked that I would be ordained as a high priest and then lead our communication group as a high counselor. And essentially now I've been working with all of interfaith, nonprofits, lots of different churches. There was a tornado response here and recovery in St. Louis. And so our church has been coordinating resources and doing tons of stuff. And because of what happened at the Catholic Church and some other big incidents, they've been asking a lot of questions about active assailant and that kind of thing. So I'd love to have your take on that from a security and a church perspective a little bit later on. But I want to start off with this kind of general question. I have personally found, and please correct me if I'm wrong, out of all the different emergency services types, and I'm really expanding that to all the ESF, 15 or 18, to include military, the most difficult transition I have seen from field to emergency management field is law enforcement. And my personal perception, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is so many law enforcement officers have to be the entire incident command. They are by themselves in the car, showing up, even when they're on their SWAT team. It's tight group of people, and they go in there and get the job done, and then everybody else does all the other things. And that makes that transition from tactical to strategic very difficult. But the ones that are able to do it become like the best because they absolutely understand all the decisions were going to happen down at the end of the road, and they have to rely on other people. And so it's like either get the best or the absolute worst. Do you find that to be true, or my way off of my perception there? Are you looking for bleeding control equipment? Impulse by Doberman Bleeding Control equipment is professional grade and built to save lives. From the Responder Pro Sling for first responders to wall-mounted kits with AEDs, compact packs for ushers and security, and the MCI resupply cache for standby teams, get your Impulse kits and training from impulsekits.com. RSET builds immersive virtual reality environments that mirror real-world spaces, giving military and first responders the power to train, analyze, and document with precision. Experience mission-ready simulation with rset.com. Protect your school, venue, facility, or community with Doberman Emergency Management's specialized 3x3 approach. We do this with protecting life, property, and continuity of operations through advanced planning, training, and assessments. Learn more about our cutting-edge approach with world-class professionals in emergency services today at DobermanEMG.com. Emergency management is changing. Are you keeping up? The Readiness Lab takes it to the next level with exclusive tabletop exercises, live sessions, and real-world intel. Access the EOC as a TRL insider, train with us through NLEM, or rep the field with our EMTs. Yeah, that's a pun. We also deliver top-tier marketing and design for emergency services and public safety, outreach, product reviews, trade show support, sponsorships, and more. The Readiness Lab is the #1 emergency services podcast network, home of the NLEM certification, bold outreach, and everything pushing the field forward. Learn more at thereadinesslab.com. Like what you're hearing? Check out our show notes for more details, including the links to each of our sponsors.
No, I think you're right. It certainly was the case for me that it was eye-opening, and I wouldn't say a difficult transition, but a steep learning curve when I went to emergency management. Law enforcement responds to so many things, and whether you're being responsive or whether you're working proactive operations, search warrants, things like that, that somebody has to run the scene, but a lot of times it is more contained, and it may not have the scope that a lot of what firefighters are used to responding to. And you're right when you talk about the other disciplines in emergency management. EMTs emergency medical personnel, they work with firefighters so regularly that they're so integrated that emergency management and ICS is just a second language to them. And in my experience, it was difficult for law enforcement. I didn't know much about it. I didn't know much about ICS until I started in 1998 with ATF, and I would say it was in maybe, I'm going to guess, 2012, 2013, somewhere around there is where I started becoming aware of that. And that really was because of the ESF 13 program. And because our agency particularly was so involved in it, which is a whole other long story, but funny story. But so when I wanted to do something different, when I got to the point where I was looking to do something different other than be on our special response team, which I absolutely loved. Great job, great team, amazing guys to work with, love the mission. But I've been doing it for a long time, and I was looking up other things to do. And, you know, like a lot of people, you get to a point in your career where maybe you just want a different challenge. You just want to learn something new. And there were only a couple of other things I was even considering. And one of them was ESF 13. And a good friend of mine named Christian Hoffman was working in our ESF 13 branch at the time at headquarters. And I talked to him and I started asking him questions. And I think to his surprise, certainly as well as mine, he ended up being promoted and leaving that job a little earlier than he had planned. And he said, "Hey, I think this job's going to be open soon. So if you are really interested in it, you know, get your resume together," which I did. I was blessed to be able to go do that and work up there for a couple of years. But yeah, I think you're right. I think the difference, law enforcement transitioning to this, having to learn ICS and having to prepare to handle these large scale operations, which don't happen that often in the day-to-day law enforcement world. You certainly can use this more often, but they typically don't.
Sure.
And it just seems like I don't know if it just seems like, well, that's so much more we have to learn. Why do we have to take all these ICS classes? We're never going to use this. It's that kind of attitude. But once you realize it, once you kind of understand it and see how fluid the command post can be, for example, how much more better, how much better the operation can be managed. It is eye-opening, and it's very helpful. I think I told you this before. When I got to ESF 13 and I started seeing how they run their command post, or for us, our National Coordination Center up in DC, I found myself thinking numerous times, I wish I had known all this when I was back in the field and doing SRT operations or even large scale operations in our field divisions. Like, man, this would have been really helpful. So, but it's just a learning curve for our field, for our industry.
When I was with the FEMA national team, we had opportunity to go to the wildland firefighters, forward base or something, and they were doing ICS, and we all thought we were pretty good. I mean, I was also young and arrogant. I'm still arrogant, but not so young. But I walked in there, and I'm literally standing next to the nation's #1 resource unit leader, Kevin Coleman. The guy's phenomenal, and he's done other really great things since he's left FEMA. But he and I are standing there. I was pretty arrogant. I thought I was basically #1 in GIS, especially because I didn't have a GIS background, so I could see from a different lens than most GIS people. He was just amazing because he's amazing. And we're standing there in their base and watching them do ICS, and it was like, oh no. Like they second language is a real thing, and living and breathing it. And I kept on thinking, I was like, man, I wish I saw this years ago, because I would have implemented it in different jobs I've had. Going back to law enforcement, like legitimately, most law enforcement don't really need to understand that stuff for their day-to-day job.
Right.
And while it can help, ICS specifically for law enforcement is different than ICS for the other emergency services. The needs are different. And really, this is kind of a call out for Pasco County. The fact that they brought Andrew in from the outside, non-law enforcement, as far as I know, with EMS and emergency management, some other backgrounds, and that he's integrated well one, and two, that the sheriff's department was willing is just phenomenal. It gives me a lot of hope for your field as well. It's like, okay, like there are times and place for this. So that's it. That's an interesting call out, and good on Pasco County Sheriff's Department or Sheriff's Office.
Oh, for sure.
Doing that.
Yeah. In any agency, sometimes when you bring in somebody new, sometimes somebody from outside the organization, it can break up some of those norms that have probably needed to be broken up for a while. But nobody thought to do it because we've always done it this way, and this just seems habitual. But it's a little bit. It's like if all your training for your team comes from guys on your team, the team never really grows. You're sort of limited, right? It's that like law of the lid that Maxwell would talk about, that you're not getting any better. But you bring someone in from the outside, and they can bring a fresh perspective. And in Andrew's case, amazing emergency management background. So yeah, great.
I just heard you say bring people in from the outside. So if anybody wants to hire Doberman Emergency Management, you can. But the reality is, like, it's true, right? Like, that disruption can be very good or it can go very poorly depending on how that person chooses to integrate. And I think there's a fine line on that. From somebody who has done multiple different jobs in multiple different roles, you've obviously found a lot of success. What would be your advice to the field of, like, hey, you want to tackle something new or the next phase of your career, whatever it may be, what would be your advice as a leader to make sure you integrate well?
Well, I think in the positions that I've been where I've changed offices, even if it wasn't into a leadership role, but you're just merging from one team to the next. And it's like, for example, when I told you when I went full-time to our SRT team in Dallas, I had been on our SRT for 7 years already, but on our West Coast team in Los Angeles. And it's a different culture. Even though it's the same program, we have 5 teams around the country. As you can imagine, they're different. They have their own legacy, their own history to that team. There are leaders on that team, whether they're in leadership positions or not. There are veterans and leaders on that team. And when you come in from the outside, you need to just take some time and absorb that and observe and look around and see what's going on. And I remember telling myself that when I got to the Dallas team, some of those guys had been instructors when I was in the academy. They were very seasoned and very well-respected operators. Just to give you an idea, I was the 10th, when I went to our Dallas team, I was the 10th man in that office. Of the other 9, and I got there in 2008, 5 out of those other 9 had been in the shootout at the Branch Davidian complex in 1993 outside of Waco, Texas. So you're talking about, these aren't rookies. These are very experienced guys. And Waco's a whole nother topic. You could spend hours and hours on it. But my point was, every team you join has a legacy, has a culture, and you have to take some time to learn that. And I remember telling myself, I'm not saying anything. I'm not giving my opinion for like 6 months. And it's not that they didn't ask for it. And it's certainly not that our team leader didn't ask for it or wouldn't have wanted it. It was just a decision I made that I just need to learn this team and learn this culture before I really start weighing in on things. Because you don't know everything. You can't come in on day one and think you know what the team is doing. And as a leader, I think it's probably even more important. Unless there are things that are safety issues or actual, policy violations or something that has to be addressed immediately. With regard to the way the culture is and the way that the team works, I think you do have to take that time and just sort of, you're the one that has to assimilate. And I think that's, I've seen mistakes made. I hope that I haven't done it too much. Maybe I have. But I have definitely seen other people do it where they came in and started changing things on day one, and that rarely goes well. Rarely goes well.
So you bring up an excellent point, and I've been in this situation now probably a lot, especially now with being in the private sector, because we have to integrate into universities, sheriff's offices, military units. We do stuff with NATO even. That's a whole lot of, trying to read the room stuff.
Right.
And even when we've been asked to, I specifically remember a director of a program, he's like, please come in hot. We need somebody to come in hot. That's specifically why you've hired you. Came in hot. I actually thought I was still like 50%, and I pissed off everybody. I made so many enemies. It went very poorly for me, and we didn't have enough sugar with the vinegar. I do think there are times and places. I think people think there's more times and places than there are, but there are times and places where you do need to be a change agent, whether it's safety issues or stagnation for too long or the wrong place to be. If your goal is to change, then you need to be willing to change people out as well. You can't keep those same people in because that cultural change won't happen. But I do think most of the time, from my experience, when I start realizing that people have more experience than I do in whatever this room is, and they are most likely prudent people, then there's a reason behind their doing stuff. Now, I can maybe correct that over time, but I don't know, taking the long view is a little bit better, except for when it comes to, life-saving, life-sustaining work. That's when I get to 100%. Kind of flow up. But I don't like to do it.
I agree. Like I said, if you see clear policy violations or safety issues, or things that are just counterintuitive to a cohesive team, on any team, you're going to have, a small percentage of people that can be negatively disruptive. And those things have to be addressed early on. But making change, I mean, you've probably seen this too, certainly in the government. Some people come in and feel like they have to leave their mark. They have to make change just for the sake of making change so that they can say, look, I did that. And it's as basic as the old saying, if it isn't broke, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Yeah. It doesn't mean that you can't improve things, but you don't have to come in and change everything just to put your brand on it. That's a little bit of ego at work in a lot of cases, I think.
Yeah, ego, and it's myopic because I don't think those people really get the results that they want to get. And it's because it's short-sighted. It's like, wait, you think you have to do everything on day one, therefore you're not going to get everything done in day 30. Mm-hmm. I will say, recently working on a project, I went in there and this team had thought they'd done the world. Like they thought they had done all these great things. And I looked at the bare minimum metrics and they hadn't completed anything. Mm-hmm. And so I went in there a lot hotter than I intended to, only because there needed to be a little bit of a wake up call. But again, I was willing to change people out and do the things that are required. Now, thankfully, those people recognized it as well. So it worked out okay in the long run. And I don't, this wasn't my intention to talk about this, but Uvalde was particularly difficult for me for a lot of reasons. Mm-hmm. One of which, an internal group, the police department takes training from their own people, and they think they're doing great stuff in their training, but then you come up to the real world incident, and basically everything they did was wrong. I don't call people out that hard very often, but I mean, we're talking about 1990 tactics of call out, waiting to the shooting stuff. You can't do that in an active shooter. Right. And it just shows that you do need people from the outside, experts, to come in and help on the inside. Mm-hmm. I don't know, that one was pretty tough for me. But I feel like if you're not law enforcement, again, I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but the perception is if I'm not law enforcement rarely brings me into their circle. Right. And when I say me, I mean just anybody. You hear about the former FBI or the former Secret Service, so they only hire or they only will work with that group. It's you're just limiting yourself. Bring in a paramedic. I don't know if you can tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah,
I hope you do.
Right. No, I think you're right. Yeah. The Uvalde incident was particularly disturbing. And I remember when I saw that event, also because it happened in Texas, and I'm from Texas. And I remember thinking, man, if there's one state where those officers are going to go in guns blazing and take care of business, and they have done in many, many cases in Texas. Yeah. But that incident, I guess because it was in Texas, it affected me a lot. And I just was stunned. And a lot of my friends that are in law enforcement, not just feds, local SWAT friends of mine, local team friends of mine, were stunned as well at the delay and the inability to make a decision and take action, and the so many, and as what's come out as a result of the investigation into that is really mind blowing, and how poorly that was managed. So and that is a leadership function. Again, like you, I don't like to armchair quarterback other police officers. I try really hard not to do that, but that case is really egregious. And one thing I'll just, since, we're talking about churches, you mentioned school shootings earlier, and I mean, the church shooting, but the school shooting as well, in that case, not seeing the bigger picture. So treating it like a barricade, that was the difference. I think what happened was somebody said that he was barricaded. And so they treated it like a barricaded subject, which is not the same as someone who's all alone in the building with no victims that have been wounded. You can treat that like a barricade because time is not really a factor.
Sure.
But once people have been shot, you are on the clock to get those people treated. So you can't treat it like a barricade because anybody that's in there shot is bleeding while you're doing nothing. And the one of the big takeaways for that was just that wake-up call. I think that, I can't say with certainty, but I would bet a pretty good amount of money that several of the people who died in that incident, tragically, would have lived had they gotten medical attention in 5 minutes instead of an hour. Yeah. I'm just refuse to believe that that's not the case. And so that inaction cost people's lives.
Uvalde was the first incident that I observed from afar, right, just on the news, where I wanted to do something ridiculous, as in my son was going to preschool, and I was sitting there at a kitchen table, and I was like, I need to take him out of school. I was like, this is unrealistic. I need to calm down. And he was fine. But it was like, I wanted to grab my keys and get in my truck and bring my kid home. And this was a week after. This wasn't during the event. And you fast forward to the UVU shooting. I went to UVU. Mm-hmm. I have lots of friends who are UVU. One of my first podcasts was with Mary Ellis. She's a national expert on human trafficking, and now she leads the open source intelligence group there at UVU. And so I'm texting her right after this saying, hey, are you okay? How close were you? That kind of stuff. And she was furious for obvious reasons.
Right.
It was her campus, and it was my school, and I'm looking at as views of schools. So I can understand your perspective with Texas. I will say Texas has been living really high on its long-term great reputation for a long time, but recent events have shown that reputation isn't keeping up with itself, and they need to invest more into systems that, whether it's alert and warning all the way through guns blazing, they do need to relook at, it's not just reputation anymore. We need to improve. So
yeah, I think every agency needs to do that constantly. You can't rest on your laurels. As a coach of mine, you used to say, when I was a college boxing coach, he used to say, you can't live in last week's headlines. You may have won the fight last weekend, but that's not going to do you any good. You still have to train for the next fight. Or military terms, right? They say you were always fighting the last war, and things change. Suspects adapt and evolve, and we have to also. But if anything, that showed them that the lack of training, and really that was a leadership failure. When you have the chief of police show up, and as to my understanding, and if I'm wrong about this, anybody can call and let me know. But from my reading of the investigation after that the police chief had two radios. Like, I get one of them might have been a primary police radio, another one might have been a tactical radio, and because it was, instead of trying to carry two radios, he just threw them both in the car and went into the building with no radio. Not that you can't get with people there that have comms and can talk to the other side, but what does that say about leadership? Communication is one of the most important things at events like that. You're not running it if you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I've seen, so I'll tell you other stories, but where sometimes, I'm not sure it's the case in Uvalde. It happened, but it might not have happened for the same reason. But I've seen leaders put themselves into operational roles because of their motivation. It was good intention. The problem is that like, here's an example. Let me do a football analogy. If you're the coach on the sidelines and you decide, hey, but I want to go in and play on the team, I want to get on the field. Well, then you're not seeing the big picture. You're not coaching the team anymore. So I've seen that with leaders who, let's say on SWAT operations, sometimes for very good reasons, for a shortage of personnel, they'll put themselves into a role, like driving one of the vehicles, like driving the armored vehicle, for example. If you're driving the Bearcat at a search warrant scene and you're the commander that's running the whole operation because you're trying to free up a body, I totally understand, and I know people that have done it, and they're great friends of mine, and they are great SWAT officers. And I've talked about this with them. The problem is that once you put yourself into an operational role, what if during that, especially if you're using the vehicle to breach the main entry point, what if that vehicle starts taking rounds? Well, now you're not running the whole scene. You're not the commander of the scene, the on-scene commander. Now you're just the driver of a vehicle that's in a gunfight. You can't possibly manage the whole scene once you put yourself into a specific position like that. So I think that's a problem that some leaders can get into. I think Uvalde, it wasn't. I think it was a leadership failure for many other reasons.
Yeah, and pulling out to lots of different areas. First of all, my grandfather Nunzio was a professional boxer, and I had aspirations to follow him before I shattered my femur. But that's cool that you boxed.
Well, martial arts was really my thing in college.
Oh, really?
Not strictly boxing, but one of the guys I worked with had been a boxer, and he was kind of helping us to. I think I was probably better with my feet in a lot of ways than I was with my hands. So he was schooling us up on a lot of the boxing aspects of it.
So I hated wrestling. So I'd never do MMA, but I was pretty good with my hands. But that being set aside, the strategic level stuff of what you're talking about, I have found the same to be true, especially for emergency management, because people did so many tactical jobs and have transitioned into a strategic job, and they want to go back to this tactical job.
Right.
And it's hard to let that go. And even me, my entire career was emergency management, so I never did anything else. But when I left that strike team and my friends were in the Paradise Fire, I wanted to leave my current job and go back out there and be in the field, and it wasn't helpful for me in my career, and it took a while to adjust to that. However, the problem with leaders sometimes is that, like, that call out that you're making is the inability to understand their greater role. I think the football analogy is perfect analogy. It is as ridiculous to me as a coach trying to be a quarterback as, an incident commander wanting to drive the vehicle or whatever. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. But that being said, like, there are shortages, and people want the glory, if you will, and they want to do that. I do want to talk about UVU a little bit and the Catholic shooting, if that's okay.
Sure.